Like, she thinks she cute. She act too bougie. And I do. Fly, oh my, it's a little bit scary. Boys want to marry. They want me to carry. They baby. And I ain't.
The house sat quiet on that still November evening. The kind of quiet that feels almost unnatural. The kind of quiet that seems to hold its breath. Neighbors would later say they felt something was off that week, but no one could explain why. It was the type of suburban street where people waved at each other without really knowing each other, where porch lights flickered on automatically at sunset, and where nothing truly dramatic was ever expected to happen. But inside one home, something had gone terribly wrong. This is the story of Jason Bloomfield, a father, a son, a man with routines, habits, responsibilities, someone whose life seemed steady from the outside, a person who texted back, who answered calls, who showed up when he said he would, until suddenly he didn't. For days, messages went unanswered. Calls rang and rang. Family members felt a worry they could not shake. His teenage son, barely old enough to understand how life can change in an instant, became increasingly alarmed. His mother, a woman who had spent a lifetime understanding her child's rhythms, felt that unspoken fear only a parent can know. Still no reply. Still silence. The last person believed to have seen him was someone close to him, someone he trusted, someone he shared a home with. But trust can be a fragile thing, and sometimes the danger that shatters it doesn't come from outside. It comes from right beside you. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last. And then came the moment when panic overcame hesitation. Jason's family decided they needed to check the house themselves. His son and his mother approached the home, with dread tightening their chests, with questions they didn't want answers to. They made their way through the back, stepping into the place that should have felt familiar and warm, but instead felt unnervingly still. What they found inside changed everything. Authorities would later say the discovery confirmed everyone's worst fears, that Jason was gone, that something deeply wrong had occurred in the home where he should have been safe. Investigators would uncover layers of deception, strange messages sent from his phone, shifting stories, and a trail of actions that made them question motives, timelines, and the truth behind what happened. But perhaps the most unsettling part wasn't the silence before his family entered the house. It was what happened after. While police were still piecing together the timeline, someone close to Jason appeared online posting cryptic updates, strange phrases, and messages that left onlookers stunned. One of those messages read, "Satan gets busy." The tone was cold, detached, almost taunting, and it sent shockwaves through the community already shaken by Jason's death. This wasn't just a case of a missing man. This wasn't just a tragedy inside a quiet home. This was a story of betrayal, denial, and behavior so baffling that investigators themselves struggled to understand it. How does a life like Jason's end so suddenly? How does someone close to him act so strangely in the aftermath? And what really happened in those final days before the truth came to light? Stay with me, because the deeper you go into this story, the more unsettling it becomes. Welcome to Lat True Crime Stories. I am your host. Today we are breaking down one of the most twisted cases you've ever seen. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and leave your comment to tell us where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Now let's get into it. Before everything unraveled, Jason Bloomfield lived a life that, on the surface, looked ordinary. The kind of life that doesn't attract attention because it blends seamlessly into the rhythm of everyday living. He was known by friends and loved ones as a calm, steady presence, reliable, soft-spoken, a man who kept close ties with his family and cared deeply for his teenage son. Jason didn't live extravagantly, and he wasn't chasing anything flashy. His world revolved around work, home, and the people who mattered. He was the type who checked in, who responded to messages, who never made his loved ones wonder where he was. He valued consistency, and the people around him took comfort in that. But behind the calm exterior of his life, there was tension brewing, tension that no one outside his home fully understood. Jason had been in a relationship with Ashley Watkins, a woman whose moods and behaviors had raised concerns in the past. Some described her as unpredictable. Others said she had a way of twisting situations until she appeared to be the victim. What everyone agreed on was that hers was a personality that could shift without warning, moving between affection and anger in ways that left those around her unsettled. Still, Jason stayed, perhaps out of hope, perhaps out of patience, perhaps because he believed things could improve. But as weeks went by, something about Ashley's behavior began to change. Family members noticed it. Friends noticed it. Even neighbors picked up on arguments inside the house, disagreements that sounded more heated, more charged, more worrying. Jason, usually an open book with his loved ones, became harder to reach emotionally. He seemed tired, worn down, pulled into stress that he didn't quite have the words to explain. And then came the moment where Jason started telling people he wasn't sure how much longer he could handle the situation. He didn't go into detail. He wasn't the type to vent every frustration, but he hinted at wanting distance, a break, maybe even a fresh start. That shift alone sent ripples through his family, who knew something serious had changed. Meanwhile, Ashley had begun posting more frequently online. Some of her posts were strange. Others were unsettling. She referred to chaos in her life, using language that seemed dramatic and dark. Phrases like "Satan gets busy" appeared in her updates, leading people to wonder what was going on behind closed doors. It was during this period of instability that Jason suddenly stopped replying to messages, stopped responding to calls, stopped showing up. For a man as consistent as Jason, this silence felt impossible to ignore. His teenage son noticed first the absence of a daily message, the lack of response to simple questions. Then his mother, then his siblings. All of them felt the same icy sensation of dread. The last person they knew had seen him was Ashley, and when they asked her where Jason was, the answers didn't make sense. This was the beginning, the moment when a quiet family life tipped into a nightmare none of them could have imagined. When Jason's family finally stepped into that house, the house that should have felt safe, familiar, and full of ordinary sounds, they knew instantly that something was wrong. The stillness inside did not feel like quiet. It felt like absence. And when they discovered what they had feared most, everything inside them broke open at once. Police were called immediately. And from that moment forward, the investigation moved with urgency. Detectives first turned to the one person who should have had answers: Ashley Watkins, the woman Jason lived with. But instead of clarity, they found contradictions. Instead of sadness, they saw behavior that felt disconnected from the reality of what had happened. And instead of remorse or confusion, they saw a woman who began posting online, even hours after Jason was found, with messages that shocked the community.
I'm gonna let y'all know right now. I got 5 screws, 3 missing, and the other 2 is loose as a motherfucker. Do not play with me. Play with your mammy.
Her Facebook updates were strangely upbeat, almost celebratory, filled with dramatic phrases and references that felt completely at odds with the tragedy unfolding around her. One post caught detectives' attention immediately. "Satan gets busy." The tone was jarring, cold, almost dismissive, and investigators couldn't ignore the timing. To them, it felt like someone trying to control a narrative rather than someone mourning a partner. As police began to track Ashley's movements, they found inconsistencies in her timeline. She had claimed she hadn't been near the place where everything happened, but surveillance evidence told a different story. Her car was recorded driving near the area earlier than she said. Her phone data didn't match her statements, and digital analysis revealed that messages had been sent from Jason's phone at times investigators believed he was already gone. The more detectives uncovered, the more tangled her explanations became. Meanwhile, Jason's family was left to grapple with the unthinkable. Not just the loss itself, but the idea that someone he trusted could have been involved. His teenage son struggled with the shock, the confusion, the sense of betrayal. His mother carried the weight of every unanswered call she'd made in the days leading up to the discovery. Investigators found additional clues that suggested rising tension inside the home. Arguments, control issues, emotional volatility, and a growing fear Jason had shared in private. He wanted to leave. He wanted distance. He wanted peace. But walking away from someone whose emotions were unpredictable can sometimes ignite the very danger they were trying to escape. As detectives continued to piece together the timeline, Ashley's behavior only drew more scrutiny. She talked to officers, but her tone wavered between defensive and detached. She posted online as if nothing life-altering had occurred. She even appeared on social media live streams looking composed, while everyone around her was in shock. Then came the turning point. The moment investigators found enough evidence to challenge her story outright. Phone records, location data, a timeline that no longer bent in her favor. And suddenly, the image she had attempted to project online began to crack, revealing something far more unsettling beneath. This was no longer just a tragic loss. This was a case of deception, a case where behavior raised more questions than answers, a case where truth was fighting its way to the surface. And the deeper detectives dug, the darker the truth became. As investigators tightened the timeline and confronted Ashley with the mounting evidence, the case reached a boiling point. For weeks, she had insisted on versions of a story that didn't align with reality. But data doesn't bend, and digital footprints don't lie. The moment detectives laid out the contradictions one by one, the emotional distance she had shown from the beginning became even more striking. Law enforcement had gathered surveillance images that undermined her claims. Phone records showed movements that directly conflicted with her statements. And the messages sent from Jason's phone after authorities believed he was already gone were impossible to ignore. What investigators saw was not confusion, but a deliberate attempt to mislead. A pattern of behavior that grew more concerning with every discovery. The breaking point came when police uncovered enough evidence to formally charge her. The facade she had displayed online, the unsettling calmness, the cryptic posts, the strange updates, all collapsed under the weight of the truth. And as the charges were announced, the community watched in disbelief. A man as gentle and grounded as Jason Bloomfield had faced harm from someone he trusted most, all while she carried herself publicly with a tone that felt disturbingly unaffected. For Jason's family, especially his teenage son and his mother, the moment the charges were filed was bittersweet. It didn't bring closure. Nothing could truly fill the void left behind, but it did bring validation. It confirmed that their instincts had been right. It confirmed that the inconsistencies they had sensed were real. And it confirmed that justice was finally moving forward. The courtroom phase was emotional. Prosecutors presented the timeline, the phone data, the online behavior, and the contradictory statements Ashley had given. The judge listened, the jury watched, and Jason's family sat through it with quiet strength, supporting one another through every difficult moment. By the time the verdict came, the truth had been laid bare. Ashley was found guilty, and a lengthy prison sentence followed. For the Bloomfield family, it was a step toward healing. Not the end of grief, but the beginning of reclaiming their peace without the shadow of unanswered questions. In the aftermath, Jason's memory became a rallying point for his loved ones. They spoke about his kindness, his steady nature, his love for his son. They remembered the life he lived, not the way it ended. Community members shared tributes. Friends voiced heartbreak. And across social media, people who never met him expressed sympathy, moved by the details of a case that felt as tragic as it was senseless. And now, as we close this story, let's take a moment to honor Jason's life. He was more than a headline, more than a case file, more than the tragedy he was caught in. He was a father, a son, a friend, and a man who deserved a future full of peace and stability. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Every time we tell these stories with truth and respect, we help keep the victims' memories alive, and we raise awareness that may help protect others in the future. Rest in peace, Jason Bloomfield. You are remembered.